In this video, I will share how I made the ultimate 55-gallon barrel foundry. To begin this project, I started designing in an online CAD software called Onshape. I love Onshape because it's free and really easy to use. In this case, Onshape made it very easy for me to decide how many sides my fire brick polygon needed in order to fit nicely within my 55-gallon barrel. I modeled the barrel, and I found that a 13-sided polygon, or a tridecagon, would work best. You can see that I also modeled the crucible, the support for the wheels on the bottom, and I also modeled the top in fire brick. Modeling the fire bricks was very easy. You can see here one is cut to the appropriate draft angles. To build up the model, I made a 4.5 by 9 inch rectangle and extruded to the proper depth, in this case 2.5 inches. From there, all you have to do is cut the draft angles, one on each face, and for a tridecagon, 13.845 degrees is the proper draft angle. The next step is to put 13 of these together into an assembly that you can see here. The tridecagon fits nicely within the barrel. Now that the modeling, the easy part, is done, it's time to go make this thing. For this project I used an insulating white fire brick, stable up to 2300 Fahrenheit. I chose white fire brick because it is highly insulating, they're very light, and I got these for relatively cheap, around $2 a piece. I tried a few different ways to cut the fire brick, and the easiest by far was with my miter saw. I used an old blade so I don't damage my good one. You may be wondering why I'm putting these fire bricks in water. It's for safety, so that when I cut the bricks on the miter saw, it doesn't spray silica dust everywhere. I still wear a mask to protect myself. It's important too. After a minute or two in the water, the fire bricks stop bubbling. That means it's time to cut them. My miter saw can't quite cut all the way through the brick, but these fire bricks are so soft that I can use a handsaw to finish off the cut, and that's what I do for the rest of them. After cutting both sides, I have a fire brick that looks just like the one I modeled. 12 more and I'll be able to make the body of my foundry. Now, it's time to assemble the body, using the 13 fire bricks I just cut. I placed this piece of OSB down because I do not want to damage my workbench with the refractory mortar. To join these together, I'm using this Rutland refractory cement, stable up to 2000 Fahrenheit. For this step, I used a taping knife. And make sure you have a pair of gloves on. This refractory cement has a lot of sodium hydroxide in it to help it cure. Once you've assembled all the pieces, use a ratchet strap to hold it all tight together, and then wait. Now it's time to assemble the base. For this, I just mortared a few fire bricks together into a square. I'll cut off the excess later. After a few hours, you can attach the body to the base. Here I'm marking the base with a marker, so I know where to apply mortar. While we wait for this to dry, let's get started on the barrel. Initially, I wanted to use a symmetrical triangular metal base for the feet on this Foundry. However, making the cuts to assemble this was far too difficult with the tools I had available, so instead I decided to use a T shape with the holes for the wheels in the exact same location they would be if I had used a triangular base. Here, I'm using an angle grinder to take paint off of the bottom of the barrel while I'll be welding on the base. First, I tack weld the base onto the bottom of the barrel. After I'm done with that, I add stronger welds. Here are the wheels I'll be using on the base to make the Foundry portable. I'll start by drilling some pilot holes where I want the feet to be. Then I work my way up through larger and larger drill bits until I get to the right size. I won't show very much about how I made my propane burner, as I mostly copied the version made by Grant Thompson at the King of Random. R.I.P. dude. My one flourish in the build of this propane burner was the use of this Minwax lid for the air aspirator. First, clean up the lid. Next, drill a hole in the center of the lid, and then expand the hole till the size is slightly smaller than the thread diameter of the pipe you're going to use. With that finished, you can assemble the pieces and test out the aspirator. When it's all assembled, it will look like this, with very fine control. Now it's time to move on and drill a hole in the fire brick for the propane torch. I chose a hole saw that's very slightly larger than the size of the steel pipe used in the burner. Next, using a handsaw, trim off the excess corners of the base so that this piece will fit into the barrel. Save these pieces as we'll use them later. Here, you can see how those excess pieces will be used to assemble the top. Now that we know how large the fire brick insert is, we can cut the barrel to the appropriate height. Mount your grinder on the proper level and then rotate the barrel to make this cut. When you're finished, you'll have a barrel the appropriate height with a very rough edge. Next, we'll need to clean that up a little with the angle grinder. Now is a good time to do a test fit of the firebrick insert, making sure that this insert plus an additional firebrick sticks slightly above the metal edge of the barrel. We don't want any sharp edges later that we could cut ourselves on. Now, drill a hole through the barrel that lines up with the hole in the firebrick. You can use the hole in the firebrick to make a mark on the interior of the barrel to give you some guidance for this cut. My hole positioning wasn't perfect, so I used these firebrick offcuts as spacers to make the holes line up perfectly. I'm using plaster and mortar to fill that gap, so here I use a piece of PVC to keep the hole intact, going from the exterior to the interior of the foundry. So that I can easily remove the PVC after the plaster is dried, I'm coating it here in a small amount of axle grease. The firebrick serves as the primary form of insulation in this build, so I have some flexibility in what material I use to fill the gap between the firebrick and the barrel. In this case, I'm using old drywall compound, a little bit of tile mortar left over from another project, and some plaster too. To further minimize waste, and to make the foundry lighter, I added these pieces of off-cut firebrick in the gap between the firebrick and the barrel wall before I pour in the plaster mix. Add plaster until the level is slightly below the top of the firebrick. Wait at least 24 hours for everything to firm up before removing the PVC pipe insert. It's loose enough that I can twist it with my hand, no need for additional tools. Now is a good time to test fit your propane burner and make sure everything is going to work out. The next step is to assemble the top and mortar it all together. I made the simplest possible lid for this, 4 pieces of fire brick mortared together. Once the lid dries for 24 hours, we're ready to fire it up. Works. The crucible, I believe there's a... Wow, look at that jet. Now that I know it works, time to put some finishing touches on it.